It looked like somebody was bent over and had their head in the window of the deer blind. It either heard me or smelt me, and he pulled his head out of the tent and stood straight up, and that shocked me. They don't make people that big.
The way it moved, almost as if it was gliding across the beach. I've never seen anything move like that in my life. They were screaming at each other in gibberish. It sounded like a language, and they were chuntering away back and forwards, back and forwards, back and forwards. I know what a bear looks like, and there is no way on this planet that what I saw were bears.
What are you reporting?
Jesus Christ, you better...
Sir?
Gio!
Hello?
Get somebody out here.
What's going on now, sir?
That son of a bitch is about 6'9", I don't know.
Do you see him now, sir?
Yes, I'm looking right at him.
Uh-oh.
Go ahead, do you want to give your mom a shout out?
Yeah, Wes, she loves your show. She loves you. Hi, Mom. Thank you for getting us the membership.
Well, there's certainly no shortage of the pheasant-back mushrooms out here. You can see, here's one, and then one over here. They look really nice. And then just looking around here in the distance, that tree has a bunch, and then this log over here has a bunch. Take a walk over there. These look pretty big. Yeah, look how big that one is down there. It's got to be about 12 inches across. And this one looks like it has a bite out of it. And this one. And there's one over here. Looks like it's holding some water. Huh? I think it's time to go.
Welcome to the show, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. Got a great show planned for you tonight. That was Cassidy there in the intro, and he was giving a shout out to his mom. And the sound that I played there in the beginning, Cassidy was on a hunting lease out there in Wisconsin, and that was a noise he heard, and it was about 10, 15 feet away while he was out there hunting. And he's going to be sharing a couple encounters with us tonight. Very strange encounters on this property. And I think this is just the beginning of these encounters on this property. So he'll be going into that. We're also going to be chatting with Travis. Travis is originally from Oregon, and he moved to Pennsylvania. And he had a real bizarre account when he was out hiking. I know you guys have heard it before. You guys have heard this behavior before. And Travis was a little shook by what happened. He really wasn't sure what was going on. And then we'll wrap up with Matt. And Matt comes to us from Pennsylvania. Matt's actually a truck driver, and he got a quick glimpse of this creature as he went by. And it was standing there looking at the traffic going by, which is another strange behavior you'll hear from these creatures, where they'll just seem to watch traffic. Very strange. It happens more than you might think. If you've had an encounter and you'd like to be on the show, shoot me an email. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com. Let's jump into it tonight. I want to welcome Cassidy to the show. Cassidy, thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me, Wes.
Yeah, thank you for being here. And I know you had a couple strange encounters out there in Wisconsin. For the audience, would you just kind of start from the beginning? Tell us what you were doing and what happened out there.
Yeah, sure. So it was a buddy of mine. We are both avid outdoorsmen, essentially lifelong hunters, and I'm a Marine myself. So we were going to do some little, like a survival, like skill honing session where my buddy's dad was going to blindfold us and drive us around and then drop us off in the middle of nowhere. And after about an hour and a half of him driving around, he dumped us off and gave us 5 topo maps and said, "Here you go, guys. I'll see you in a couple days." So after wandering off the maps that he gave us, we finally found a trail we could hike down, and we started on our way. After hiking all day, we found a nice little spot to camp, make shelter. It was on the backside of a pond that was off the trail. So we're on the backside of the pond, and the way it's set up is you kind of go down this it's got a little grade you got to go down. And on the right side would be the pond. On the left side, it kind of keeps steeping in this little hill. It's like a ledge almost. So we made our shelter into the side of this ledge so that when you look out, you see the fire and then the pond. It was late afternoon by the time we got the shelter done and got fire and food. And I will never forget how precise my thoughts were at this moment. I was standing in front of the shelter. My buddy Tim was to my left. I was putting my fleece back on because it was still getting cold that time of year. It was early spring, April. And in the North Woods, it gets cold still at night. It gets down in the 30s still. So I was putting my fleece on, and I remember I was adjusting the left cuff on my sleeve, and something behind our shelter. Now, the hill behind our shelter was extremely steep at this point. It was only about 8 feet tall, but very steep. So I'm adjusting my sleeve, and something standing on the ledge behind our camp, it didn't howl at us. It didn't growl at us. It screamed at us. And it was a long, deep, girthy scream. It was like a human would scream, but obviously not a human. It was really long. It was long enough to where I could, in my mind, I could run through the list of animals in North Woods of what their noises are. So, okay, it's not a black bear. Black bears, they growl. It's not a moose. Moose make kind of like a cow kind of sound in a sense. Foxes in heat, I know they make like a screech. They sound like a pterodactyl. Wolves are magnificent. My buddy who I was with, he can howl at the wolves and they can howl back. So it definitely wasn't that. Elk, which we don't have in that part of the state, they sound beautiful when they bugle. So it was none of those. I know cougars, they are rare in the area, but they have more than one vocal. They do 2, 3, 4 at a time. This was one long simultaneous yell, scream, roar. And at the end, it tapered off into was like high pitched, like its voice cracked or something, but it was high pitched for like the last 3, 4, 5 seconds. And that's when my mind goes, wow, that is a really loud bird. And then my brain said, there's no way that can be a bird because birds don't have a lung capacity to yell that long. And then I thought the reason why I was thinking it was a bird is because it was high. It was high up. It was like, there's a difference if someone screams in your face 3 feet from you, and there's a difference if they stand on a second-story balcony and they take 3 steps back and they scream at you. You can differentiate the height difference of someone screaming. That's what it seemed like. It was higher up, but it was just stepped back far enough on that ledge to where we couldn't see anything. So I'm standing there. I have my right hand on my left cuff sleeve. This yelling just stops, and my buddy Tim and I, we instantly grab our pistols. We grab our firearms. I had a 9mm. He had a 44 Magnum, and we both ran around the shelter to where the incline was about 3.5, 4 feet, so you can get up it in one good step. You're up to the top, which is about 20 feet from our shelter. So a 20-foot sprint, one step up the hill, and now we're in hardwoods, Wisconsin, spring. There's no foliage. There's the leafy greens are just starting to come out of the ground. They're a couple inches tall. So with the sway of the hips, you could see 80, 20, 120 yards, depending on, how far you sway your hips to the left and right. And there's nothing there. So whatever can scream, howl, yell, roar at us from at a flat distance of, let's say, 15 feet, and then can disappear in 100 yards in 3 seconds in the woods, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, have you found anything to compare that scream to?
Yeah, last week I found a video on YouTube. It was posted on the Sasquatch Chronicles Facebook page of a man who was mushroom hunting, and he was talking about the pheasant-back mushrooms, and then he essentially got yelled at by something, and I instantly knew right away what that was. Ours was like that, extremely like that, except for, like I said, it got high pitched at the end, a little bit longer, like that long, and then add on about 5 seconds of high pitched screaming. And I had sent that video to my buddy. And he's a tough dude. I mean, I've seen this guy injure himself and say, okay, we got to go to the hospital. And he'll say, well, no, let's finish the job first. And I sent him that video, and he said, that gave me chills up my spine. I have goosebumps. He's like, that's what we heard. He's like, I don't know what that is, but that's what we heard.
Yeah, it's so bizarre how they can be so close and scream, and then you get up and there's nothing there. And I've talked to people that have been in that position, where I think I told you the story of the guy in the tent, and he saw this huge hand run down the side of his tent, and he saw the outline of this thing, and he grabbed his pistol, and the tent came out, there was nothing there. Bizarre, man. Really bizarre. So obviously you guys can't leave. I mean, you guys were dropped off in the middle of nowhere. Did anything else happen while you were there?
We stayed the night. It was very uneasy. It was cold too, but it was very uneasy of a night. Nothing else happened to us. I don't know if whatever, the master of this thing's domain seen that we had firearms when we ran up the hill and it hid, or it took off, or both. But nothing else happened that night. We both did feel uneasy, and we woke up before it was light out to leave.
Yeah, I don't blame you for leaving. What did you think was screaming at you? What did your buddy think was screaming at you? I mean, what was kind of your guys' conversation?
We had no idea. His dad, who lives up there now, he has no idea. I don't know. I later started finding the show Finding Bigfoot, and I was like, man, maybe that's what this was. And then I got in the year show, and the more and more encounters I hear, the more and more I'm starting to think that's what it could be. There's no other explanation.
Yeah, it's spooky, man, especially when you can't see it. Tell me about, I know there's 2 other odd encounters. Tell me about the next one. Was it in the same general area?
No, that one was in northern Wisconsin, which is very, very remote. That place is actually surrounded by a state forest, 2 state forests and a national forest, but it's remote. This next 2 happened at my hunting lease on the western part of the state. This happened last summer, and then the second encounter happened this past winter. Our hunting lease is, we hunt the back side of a 350-acre plot. We have 100 acres in the back. And then we have other property scattered about the area. This area is all flat farm fields, rolling hills, scattered in with woods and, pretty thick forests back and, you have woods in the middle of the fields essentially, and there's about 2 to 3 houses for every mile long of area, I would say. And the majority of them they're Amish. So those people keep to themselves. They don't really talk to outsiders, and especially not about weird stuff like this, per se. So we had gone up there. It was actually this time of year last year to set up all of our stuff for deer hunting, get the trail cams in, get shooting lanes cut, get, new stands put up. It was my dad, my uncle, my cousin, myself. We worked all day, went and got some food, came back. My cousin and I decided that we would go do some coyote hunting at night. My dad and my uncle were too worn out from the day's work, so they stayed back to go to sleep. So my cousin and I went to the back side of that 350. The way it's set up like a U or a horseshoe. So down the middle is this sliver of woods. I'd say it's about 40, 50 yards wide, but it's real deep, like a valley. It goes down probably 40 feet. And there's a trail down there that we put a water trough in for the deer. So they have a little sanctuary down there to hide. And I would say it's about 120 yards long, that little valley. And we were sitting at the bottom part of the U, so you can see out in the field, see coyotes come from both directions. And the way the coyote calls work, it's electronic. You press the button, you change it for different animal calls. So we were sitting so we can see both the left side of the U and the right side of the U, and the sliver of the woods is down the middle in front of us. So I'm using the call. The first animal call didn't work, so I turned the volume down before I move into the next series of calls. And I don't know if I hit the volume up button on accident or the unmute button, but when I went to go hit the second call, after it being quiet for about 10 minutes, hit the second call, and the volume just blares out. And what you shouldn't do is you're supposed to work your way into it. So the volume, full blast, super loud, blares a fawn in distress noise, and something was on the edge of the wood line in that little sliver of woods, and I must have scared it when I hit that call, because it went crashing through that valley. And like I said, there's a trail down there. You can drive a four-wheeler down this trail, and whatever it was crashing through the valley for no reason. There's a big wide trail you can run down. I've heard deer run through the woods. I've heard deer run through the dry corn stalks. They make noise when they want to go, but this was different. It went plowing through there, breaking stuff. And my cousin looks at me and he goes, "What the F was that?" And I said, "I don't know." It's like, "It sounded like a train, didn't it?" And he goes, "Yeah." And what I mean by it sound like a train is, if you've ever been the first car or second car parked at a train tracks, when the train stops, the boxcars bang into each other. Kaboom, 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 kaboom. That's exactly what went through my mind when that happened, was the train stopping and the boxcars banging into each other. So we listened to it run all the way through that valley, and we were dumbfounded on what it was. So after that, we were like, okay, well, this hunt is over. We just blew out all the other animals out of the woods from that. So I went out in the field, I picked up the call, and we made our way back to the camper. Our camper is on the front side of the property, but still closer to the field and woods and stuff. And we went back to the camper. We went back in, hit the rack, and passed out. No big deal. Well, the next morning, my dad wakes up and says, "Did you guys get anything?" "No." "Okay. Would you guys get locked out last night?" "No. Why would we get locked out? The door's never locked unless we leave for the week or we go, in town or something." "Oh. Well, I thought I heard you guys knocking on the camper to wake one of us up." "No, the door is always unlocked. We just came in and went to sleep." "So what do you mean someone was knocking?" "Well, it was weird. It was like a repeated pattern a couple of times all around the camper, 3-4 times. Knock, knock, knock. Knock, knock. Knock, knock, knock." Well, that doesn't make any sense. Why would we knock all the way around the camper? We would just bang on the door. "Yeah, I don't know. It's just weird. I thought you guys were locked out." I didn't really think anything of it until, later on the drive home, recalling some of the stories that are on your show, Wes, about people with campers. They usually have these things knocking on the windows and stuff. So
Yeah, that's bizarre. Almost like it followed you back then.
Exactly. Like we must have scared it, and it was pissed at us, so it tried to freak us out.
That's spooky, man. And you said the third encounter happened in the same area. Are you
The exact, yeah,
hunting lease?
my exact same hunting lease. The camper's in the same spot. That was this winter. We went to go do some coyote hunting. There's about a foot of snow on the ground. We had a pretty rough hunt. Tried to do the snow to the field. So my cousin and my uncle were done walking through the snow. So we went back to the camper, and I said I was going to try and do a little cheat hunting, and put the call out in the field near the camper, so I could look out the window of the camper and see if we were getting any movement out in the fields coming toward the decoy or to the call. So I put it on what would be the tail end of the camper, out in the field behind it, so that way when I exited out would be the passenger side of the camper. I could sneak along the side of it and look out in the fields, and I could work my way around the rear of the camper and look out in the field, which would be on the driver's side when it's connected to the vehicle. You could look in the big field. It's got a big hill, lots of view. I could see things coming from a long way from there if I needed to. So I put the call out, and I'm inside. We're hanging out, and I'm pressing the buttons from inside. And I go to look out the rear window so I didn't have to go outside. And there's a screen in front of the window, and the windows were all fogged up from it being warm in there. So I couldn't wipe the condensation out the window. So that kind of blew that idea out the water of trying to stay warm and hunt. So I would walk out to the tail end of the camper, look around in the fields with my green Predator light. Didn't see anything. Walked around to the rear side, seen some deer out in the field up at the top of that hill. Wasn't much going on. So I walked in my same footsteps back out in the field to get my call, because I didn't even tie my boots. I was just in, my base layer, which would be like your long johns. So I walked in my same tracks back out to get my call, walked same footsteps back because I didn't have my boots tied at all, and we called it a night. So later that night, I'm sleeping in my bunk, which is at the tail end of the camper, and I wake up to hearing crunch, 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 crunch. And then I hear what would be like a tapping at my window where my head is by my bunk. Tap, 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 tap. And I was like, this can't be real. So I looked at my phone, and it was 5:23 a.m. And it was silent for a second. And then I hear crunch, 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 crunch. And it gets quieter. Like whatever it was, walked up to the camper, knocked on the window, like tapped on the window with its fingernail, and then had walked off. And I knew that from previously hunting that earlier that night that if I could look out that window, I would, but I can't. The condensation's so bad. And you can't wipe it off from the screen being in the way. So I just laid in my bunk and thought there's no way that this is happening. And I looked at my phone again, and I just kind of laid there. And I said, well, I'm not going to jump out and start shooting this thing. And I'm not going to wake everybody up at 5:30 in the morning for nothing to be there. But this is really weird. And I figured there's nothing really I could do about it. So I just went back to bed.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if it's the same one your dad heard, coming and tapping on the camper.
Yeah, this one was tapping on the window, and my dad said it was knocking on the actual walls of the camper. But yeah. And the next morning I woke up, and my uncle was already awake and said, hey, you didn't walk out by the back of the camper, did you? Because I wanted to look for footprints or something. He said, no. So I walked out there, and there was no other footprints. But then I thought about it, of how other guys have said that they don't like to leave tracks and how they'll purposely avoid the snow patches when it's spring. Or I was like, oh, well, there's no footprints. But on the way home, I thought about those things, and I thought, I wonder if I was walking in my exact tracks just like I did the night before.
Yeah, it could be. It's so bizarre, the behavior of this thing. Have you gone out there when you're not hunting and just kind of taking a look around to see what you could find?
We're either up there doing work, like I said, for with the deer stand stuff, or we're out hunting, but never really just to go hiking to look for stuff.
Does it worry you a little bit? I mean, these encounters, I think, freak a lot of hunters out. Usually a hunter, especially if they're in one area, these things will come around. I had one guy on the show one time where he ended up shooting at them. They kept coming around his camper and screwing with them, and it was a hunting lease, and he came out and popped off a couple shots. He came back a week later, and something had jammed a tree right in the middle of his camper, right where he was sleeping. And he had seen it. It was looking in the window at him a couple times. Does it worry you at all being out there hunting on this property now?
I always carry a firearm, and being the stubborn, cocky Marine that I am, I'm not really too worried. If anything tries to pull one over and get me in that sense, they had also better be prepared to die. So it's in the back of your mind, but I mean, I always carry when I'm out there. So whether it's for him or worst case scenario, it's for me, something.
Yeah, I hear you. What do you think that they are, Cassidy? What's kind of your opinion after listening to the show and then having these weird experiences out there? What do you think that they are?
I don't think they're anything spiritual, or I don't think they're anything extraterrestrial. I think they've been here a long time. They've been here just as long as us. There's a different branch of the tree per se, and they're masters of their craft. And they, I think Les Stroud said it best, that if these tiny pockets of these things are hiding out and they don't want to be found, they don't necessarily be found. And now that we're coaching on their areas, now we're starting to have more and more encounters with them. But I think they're just creatures, flesh and blood creatures.
Yeah, I hear you. When you heading back out there next season or this coming season?
Oh no, we're going up in 2 weeks to go put up the stands and do some coyote hunting.
Well, let me know when you're out there if anything bizarre happens. A lot of times I'll tell people, don't get me wrong, I'm all for killing one of these things. I'm all for it. But I think if you're a hunter and you're out there in a position to where fear takes over, I know you're a Marine, but if fear takes over, you get a guy who's afraid, put a gun in his hand, he's going to start shooting. I would be real careful doing that out there. I don't think that they run around alone. I think if you see one, there's probably 2 or 3 others close by. And so, but you have to let me know when you go back out there if anything else happens.
Yeah, I definitely don't think they're alone either. I was looking at the BFRO's page about their reports on both the places that I've had these encounters, and the one further north with the screams, there was wood knock encounters there a couple of years later, and the one on the western part of our state where we have our lease, within where the crow flies, there's a town within 10 miles. This is the next town, and some guy outside of town said he's seen a daytime juvenile sighting of one. So
yeah, they're definitely out there in Wisconsin. I mean, people don't think that they are. I've even had reports of Iowa. I don't know if you've ever been to Iowa, but it's pretty flat. And yeah, I've had I've had reports of them there too. So it doesn't shock me one bit they're out there in Wisconsin. And to be honest with you, they're probably doing the exact same thing you're doing. They're probably hunting. That's what makes me so nervous with hunters, because you're stepping in on what they're doing. And so sometimes there's altercations, there's aggression. I think a lot of their behavior is to get you to go away. It's meant to scare you, because if these things really wanted to kill you, they would have killed everyone in that camper and no one would have stopped them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's your dad think about it? Just out of curiosity, what's your dad's, have you talked to him about your experiences on top of what happened to him?
I haven't really talked to him. My dad's not really the biggest hunter. It's my uncle. My uncle's a bigger hunter than probably all of us. He spends the most time up there. He'll spend weeks up there. He can hunt from, or he can work from the camper. So he'll spend weeks up there bow hunting, and he's open-minded to it. He's like, I don't disbelieve. I just haven't had anything to make me believe. And then I kind of showed him your show a little bit, and I, told him what happened with the stuff with us and put it into comparison. And he's definitely swaying over to the believer side, I think.
Yeah, hopefully there's not an altercation on this property. That's the only thing that worries me, is that I think your average hiker, your average person that runs into them, they have an encounter, then they go their separate ways. Hunters, on the other hand, I think, I've heard so many encounters of them stealing hunters' deer, which is bizarre because if you think about it, that means they're sitting there watching you, waiting for you to kill something. And sometimes there's altercations. There may not be. This one doesn't sound really aggressive. He just kind of sounds like he's trying to screw with you, get your attention. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That first encounter, though, of them screaming, I wish I had a great answer for you as far as how it can just be there and then not be there, that close. Because when they scream, it rattles you. I don't care what anyone says. It rattles you.
It froze me in my tracks. Literally had my hand on my cuff of my sleeve for the entire time. Frozen. Ice frozen.
Yeah, no doubt. And then, but for it not to be there is so weird, and I've heard that so many times that I wish I had a great answer for people. I just don't. I don't know how, sometimes sound bounces around in the woods, but if something's 10, 15 feet away, it's 10, 15 feet away. Just like your second or third encounter when you're in your trailer and you hear it walking, the way you're describing it, it's obviously on two legs. It's not a bear strolling up. Bear's probably not going to stroll up anyway, but it sounds like it was on two legs coming up before it tapped on the window.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Be careful out there, man. Be real careful out there. And if you come across one, my advice, for whatever it's worth, I would treat it like you would a bear. Just try and back away. Don't engage with it, and 9 times out of 10 they'll leave you alone.
Yeah, yep. And then I will definitely give you a call after that happens.
Yeah, please do. Please let me know. I'm really curious. I don't think this is the end of your encounters out there. It's probably doing the exact same thing you guys are doing. It's probably hunting on this property, and it's probably roaming around, keeping an eye on where you guys are at, what you guys are doing. It obviously knows where you guys are staying. That's the other thing. If you have any sort of altercation, I wouldn't stay in that camper because that's the first place it's probably going to come back to. But be safe. Let me know if anything else happens, will you?
Yeah, we'll do, Wes.
And I sure appreciate you taking the time to come on, Cassidy.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I want to welcome Travis to the show. Travis, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Wes. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on. I know you had a kind of a real strange encounter out there in Oregon, and I know you moved to Pennsylvania and had a couple bizarre encounters out there. If you would, kind of take us back to that moment out there in Oregon, kind of what were you doing and what happened?
All right, Wes. It was either 2012 or 2013. And I lived in the town of Sweet Home, Oregon at the time. Me and my ex-father-in-law, we went up elk hunting, and we went to this area between, I'm sure the locals that listen to the show know, Moose Mountain and Sheep Creek. We were up in the mountains there, and we pulled up to this old skid road that hadn't been used in years. There were trees down across it and things, and we decided to go up there to see if we could find a bull. So we split off, and he went one direction, I went up the skid road, and I was following these large sets of tracks for an elk. And after a little ways of walking, I stopped, just checking out these tracks, and directly to my right, where I was standing, a large limb and a very large Douglas fir tree broke and fell to the ground. And it was odd because there was no rain and there was no wind when this happened. And my guess would be the tree being about 2 foot in diameter and about the length of a small tree had fallen. And it scared me a little bit. And I looked up into these trees, and it was dark. It was very early in the morning, and I couldn't really see anything up there. And I stood there for a few seconds looking around, kind of contemplating why this limb had fallen out of this tree. And I passed it off, and I kept on going up the skid road, following these elk tracks. Well, when I got to this top of the hill, it turns to a right, and there's where the skid road is. It's cut into a bank on both sides, so there's about a 4 or 5 foot berm on each side, and then really old sallow brush and things like that growing on each side. It was real thick. Well, right when I got into the middle of that berm area, all my senses took off. All the hair on my body stood up. All my senses went alert. It was the strangest thing I've ever happened to me. And where the road continued, and it turned again around this corner, but I couldn't see down there. But something told me, don't go down any further than you are. So I'm immediately started to back up, looking at the brush to see, what this could be, because we did have a lot of mountain lions, and there are some bear up there. And I was just kind of curious what it was. But pretty quickly after that, my senses told me, you just need to leave. You need to get out of here right now. Don't turn back. And so I turned around and I walked calmly back down this hill on the skid road. As a hunter, I know not to run to entice predators to attack. So I walked back down the skid road. And when I got most of the way back down the skid road, my father-in-law at the time, he walks down the hill he was coming on so gradually and with his hands in his pockets, his rifle on his shoulder. And he goes, "Did you see anything?" And I said, "No, I didn't see anything." But at the same time, my senses were just screaming like, we need to go right now, let's go. But I didn't say a word to him at the time. And we worked our way through the down trees and things on the skid road. And none of these senses stopped screaming until I opened the truck door, got in and closed the door, and we started to back out of there. And then I started to calm down a little bit. But that was the most intense experience as far as sensations go I've ever had out in the woods. I'll never forget it.
Yeah, it's pretty bizarre, especially when you're hunting, to have that take over,
Yeah.
And it's good to listen to your gut. And it is weird when you have that happen. I mean, I've been out there before, and this is before anything with Bigfoot, and I've had those senses kick in, and it's kind of unnerving because you can't really explain why you're feeling that way. I mean, it's not like, I realized a branch fell. That was a big branch that fell, by the way, almost like something was sitting on it. But it's bizarre. It's hard to articulate that sense that you're in danger, but you can't explain why. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so you moved to Pennsylvania, and other things happened there. Tell me about it.
Yeah, so I moved to Western Pennsylvania, out by Pittsburgh. And one day, Gabby, my wife, she told me, you haven't been out hiking in a while, and she'd go on a hike. So I thought it was a good idea. So I drove out to this state park I like a lot called Lynn Run State Park, and it borders the Forbes State Forest. So I drove right through the state park, kind of looking for a place to go. And I found this little parking area. The park was completely empty at the time. It was February 2nd of 2019 is when this happened. I remember the day. And there was still a little bit of snow on the ground. There was no one there whatsoever. So I pulled in this little parking lot, and I parked my car. The trail was called Quarry Trail. And me and my dog, I have a Dachshund named Beretta, we went hiking. And she was my partner. Like, she never left my side. I didn't have to keep her on a leash if I didn't want to. And so we went hiking up this trail. And about 3/4 or a mile up this trail, on the left side, it sloped up into a big hill. And there was some green, looked like probably wild rose bushes or something on there. There's the only green thing there at the time. Everything else was still dead. And as soon as I started walking where that brush was growing, I started hearing footsteps. Not footsteps, but movement in the brush. And I noticed it right away, but at the first it didn't dawn on me that it could be anything. I just figured it was a deer. And I walked a little bit, and it was still keeping pace with me side by side. And I started thinking that's kind of strange. So I stopped and I looked up on the hill to see if I could see what it was. And I couldn't see anything because the brush was so thick, and I was down low, it was up high. I waited there for a few seconds, and I didn't see anything. So then I turned and I continued to walk up the hill again. Well, as soon as I started walking, the brush started moving with me again, following me right up the hill, side by side. So I stopped and I turned around and I looked. I stood there for a couple minutes and I couldn't see anything. So as soon as I turned to head up that trail, took one step, I heard a loud knock on a tree. And I stopped again. I looked and I was wondering if somebody's playing games with me or something, or if something fell from a woodpecker possibly, and I'm just curious what this is. And nothing. So then I turned to do it again to go back up the hill and heard another knock. So then I stopped again. Okay, this is getting weird. Well, on the left side of the trail where the knocks and the movement was coming from, further up, I heard a loud scream. And it was a loud, long scream, very deep scream. And it lasted probably 2 or 3 seconds. It's nonstop. And I knew it wasn't a bird or any animal that was in the area, because I'm a bird watcher type person. I know a lot of bird sounds and animal sounds, so I knew for a fact it wasn't one of those. But I wasn't afraid. I was curious, so I kept going up the trail, and I ended up hiking all the way up the trail, and then we came back. And when we got back down to just about the same spot that I had stopped when I heard the noise and the brush up on the hill, my dog, started noticing my dog was acting funny. She usually carries a rock and likes to fetch rocks for whatever reason. Well, she runs past me, drops a rock, and runs about 20 feet up in front of me and stops, turns in the trail and cocks her head, and she's looking at me. And I'm keep on walking. And then right then and there, I knew there was something not right, because my dog doesn't do this. She would try to take that rock home with her if she could. And I was looking at her eyes, and she'd look right at me, and then her eyes would dart right to the side of the trail where I was closest and look at something. She'd focus on it. She'd look it back at me. Then she'd focus on it again. And when I get closer to her, she ran back down the trail about 20 more feet and did the same thing, constantly looking at me and looking at something in the brush behind me. And I knew there was something there, and all my senses told me, do not turn around, whatever it is, don't look at it, just keep walking, don't pay attention to it, just keep going. And we did this all the way until we got to a big rock outcropping almost at the bottom of the trail. This is what happened. The same thing happened with her and me. And that's when I got to the rock outcropping and had big rocks on one side and on the other I could see. I turned around because I started feeling a little bit, the feeling started easing up. I turned around, I didn't see anything there. And we proceeded to get into the car and go home. And I went home and told my wife about it. But it was a very strange experience. And there was definitely something there. And I definitely know for a fact there was something there.
Yeah, especially for your dog to alert to it. You sent me a howl. Is this kind of what you heard?
It was just like that, but it was a lot closer to me than what it sounded like the recorder picked up in that video.
Yeah, it's fascinating. That one's from Florida. I'm curious, did you have that same type of feeling walking that trail as you did that day you're out with your ex-father-in-law?
It wasn't as bad. The hairs didn't stand up on my neck or anything like that like it did the first time. But my dog alerting the way she did is what, and knowing the odd experience I had going up the trail is what really kind of put it in perspective for me. Is like, there's something here and I probably shouldn't be here right now. So I should probably leave. I didn't feel like I was in danger, but I felt like I wasn't wanted there and I should probably get out of there like right now, because I was in somebody else's territory and I didn't belong there. I was trespassing.
Yeah, it's unnerving when something starts to pace you out. And I always said it before, dogs will tell you when these things are around. I mean, they'll alert you and let you know when something is around. Have you ever gone back to that trail, or was that kind of it?
I've wanted to go back to that trail, and I drive by it often, but I can't bring myself to actually go up that trail again.
Yeah, who could blame you? It's
Yeah,
unnerving, man. Especially, you're walking up there and you're hearing the knocks, and if you're not really into Bigfoot, you don't know what to make of it. You know what I mean? It's like, well, what the hell's
yeah,
knocking? So,
right.
like you said, a
Yeah,
woodpecker. A woodpecker would make sense. Maybe it hit something, or I think we try and find answers and just pass it off. But I almost think it's their way of signaling you're on your way up. Is kind of what I think is what they're doing.
when I heard the knock and then the howl response immediately after the second knock, that is what I kind of attributed it to. Is that after thinking back on it, is that somebody was telling somebody that I was coming up the trail, and somebody up the trail was telling person down the trail that they knew I was coming, kind of thing, like telephone.
Yeah, yeah, exactly
Yeah,
like telephone, and then one's following you, which makes it
yeah,
even more unnerving, especially when you can't see it. That's the one thing I don't get. They seem to be able to follow you step by step, but it's almost impossible that they're able to do that because most accounts people can't see what's pacing them. But when they stop, it stops. When they move, it moves.
yeah. That was the thing. Is the time of year I went up there, all the leaves were dead and on the off the tree. In the area I was walking, the brush was quite thick, and I didn't so much as hear a twig snap, but I knew there was something there because my dog knew something that was there, and she was telling me there was something there with her eyes. So
Yeah, it's unnerving. It's amazing how dogs can pick up on it. You know what I mean?
yeah, they got better senses than I do.
Yeah. If you ever decide to go back there, let me know. I'd be real careful going back up there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, especially after what the researcher went up there and found. That was interesting.
Oh
After he
yeah.
contacted me about it and he found that footprint in the mud, bare footprint in the mud there,
Yeah,
and then
interesting. And for the
stuff
audience,
overturned.
kind of explain that because they're I know what you're talking about, but they don't.
Okay, so I'm on the Pennsylvania hiking group, and somebody a while back asked about their Bigfoot experiences in Pennsylvania. Well, I posted my experience about that particular event, and George Workman contacted me via Messenger and asked me about it, and I told him where it was, and so he went up the same trail, about the same area that I had my experience, and he found a barefoot human-like footprint in the mud and not much bigger than a regular person's, and a bunch of large overturned rocks that would take quite a bit of work for a regular person to overturn, looking like something had been foraging for something under the rocks.
Interesting. Did he
And
send you a picture of the footprint?
he did send me a picture of the footprint and a tissue next to it for size comparison. Yes.
How big was it?
From the way the picture looked, it probably was. I'd probably say it was a men's size 13 shoe type size. It didn't look terribly large, but the area where it was located, the trail is really rocky, and there's a lot of broken branches and sharp things that could easily poke you in the foot. And this was probably 3/4 or a mile up this trail. And in the around February, when there was snow melt still on the ground, so it wouldn't make sense for somebody to be walking barefoot up there, especially stepping into a ice cold, muddy, uh, what used to be a mud puddle.
Yeah, it really does make no sense. It's fascinating to have accounts like this. A lot of people a lot of people have encounters where they don't see it, but they're, like you were paced out, something screamed, something hit a tree, and I think a lot of people try to make sense of what was going on. I know you've listened to the show. What's kind of your thoughts as far as what Sasquatch is?
I've thought about this question for years, and the best thing I can come up with that makes sense to me is that it's a some type of relic hominid that just has didn't do well with modern humans in the past and doesn't want anything to do with modern humans now. And it just tries to stay away from as much as possible.
Yeah, it's bizarre that they're on trails, though. You know, that a lot of people, it sounds like a trail a lot of people would probably walk, probably more in the summertime than when you went up, but it's bizarre they would be around that area. You know, they seem to live kind of on the outskirts of humanity for the most part. You know, they're not too far away.
Yeah, I completely understand. Well, where I was a state forest as well, so there's a lot of forested area up there where I'm sure they could stay hidden pretty well.
No doubt. Well, be careful on those walks, man, if you ever take your dog back out. And
One
go ahead.
one of these days I'll probably go back up there, but I'll try to see if there's other people at the trailhead when I do. So I'm not up there by myself this time.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, be safe if you do decide to go back. And I appreciate you coming on and sharing it, man, very much.
Oh yeah, you're welcome, Wes.
I want to welcome Matt to the show. Matt, I know you're driving truck. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on. Welcome to the show, man. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for asking. And thank you again for being here. And I know you had a strange encounter when you had sent me your email. You know, you were so unsure of what you had saw because when you were driving past it, it had red eyes. If you would, and I know it was just a real quick glimpse at seeing this thing as you were driving by, if you would, I know this happened in Pennsylvania. Can you just kind of tell us what you were doing and what did you see?
All right. Well, I had picked up a load before the sighting. It's somewhere south of State College, but I don't remember because it's the only time I was ever at that location, and I haven't been there since. But I was taking back roads to make my way back up to 80 because I was heading back to Scranton with that load. So I've tried, I don't know how many times. I think I told you yesterday. I can't for the life of me figure out exactly where I was at. But I had made a turn onto, I don't remember if it was the same state route that just turned or if it was another route that I had turned onto. But I started going up a slight incline, and there's a bank on the right-hand side that's about, I'm guessing somewhere around 10 feet elevated off the surface of the road. And in my peripheral vision, I have pretty decent peripheral vision, and I noticed this thing right away. And I recognized exactly what it was right away too. It's just like I got such an adrenaline dump. It was crazy. I did not see it moving at all. It was just standing there watching traffic, and I had some cars behind me. So I don't know if it was not fixated on one vehicle or another, but it was just watching. It looks like it's just watching the road, and it was standing just outside the tree line at the top of this bank that was on the side. As I was looking at it, I got almost immediately drawn to its eyes because they weren't glowing, but they were extremely bright red. Like it really stood out. And when I first noticed it, it was probably, now I'm just guessing because just throwing out my best guesses on measurements because now obviously I wasn't able to get out there and run a tape measure on it, but I'm guessing it was probably about 100 feet away when I first noticed it. And as I was passing it, because I didn't stop because I knew I had traffic behind me, but at the closest point as I was passing, it was probably only, I would guess, maybe 30, 40 feet away. But yeah, it just was standing there watching traffic, and I did not see it move at all. And after I passed it, and this was before I started listening to the show. So when I noticed the red eyes, I started wondering if it was even real or not, because I had never heard of them having red eyes before I started listening to the show. So I was trying to figure out whether it was real. It was three-dimensional. It's not like it was a cutout or anything. And it was, if I had to guess, I'd probably put it at 6.5 to 7 foot tall.
It's bizarre, isn't it? I mean, you hear accounts all the time where they sit and watch traffic, and you would think for such an elusive animal that they wouldn't do that, but it happens a lot. Where a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
people see them from the side of the road. Was there anything about it that stood out to you besides the red eyes?
Uh, Not specifically. I mean, it may sound strange, but I don't think I can really describe the face or its features that well because I was just fixated on his eyes. I mean, like I'm guessing its shoulders was probably about three. I wouldn't say more than 3.5 feet wide, and his waist was narrow, much more narrow than its shoulders. But it didn't make it look goofy. It was just noticeably more narrow, and it was like a kind of like a Carhartt tan or brown color, like a light brown.
Yeah, it's amazing, man. Especially, I love truck drivers because truck drivers see a lot of bizarre things, as you and I
Oh
talked
yeah.
about. They see a lot of weird things on the road, and a lot of truck drivers see these things. And it's generally, I've heard from a lot of truck drivers that have the almost the identical encounter like you do. They passed it and they weren't sure. It really wasn't moving. It was just standing there watching traffic. And I've heard that so many times. Did it affect you at all, or did you want to go back? I can't imagine there's a place to pull over a big rig out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I mean, there's just a 2-lane road and no shoulder at all. I mean, I would love to. I mean, regardless of it being traffic behind me or not, like now I think about it, I wish I had just stopped. Just because I had probably 3 to 4 second total window time in which I was able to see it as I was driving up the road. It didn't really affect me as far as like being any sort of major traumatic experience because again I was debating whether it was real or not because those eyes really threw me off, not knowing any better at the time.
Yeah, and I could see that. Thinking that some doll up there or something with red eyes, because red eyes really doesn't make any sense for a primate. I mean, we have the red
Yeah.
eyes, but it's camera giving that off from a flash. I mean, we don't walk around with red eyes. But
Yeah.
these things do have red eyes. I could see why you would be focused on this thing. What do you think that they are, Matt? What do you think that this creature is? After listening to the show and then getting a glimpse of what you saw, what's kind of your gut tell you?
Well, like you said, from listening to the show, I've kind of come up with, I guess, my own idea, which I'm not, stuck to. I mean, I'm open to being wrong. I mean, I have no problem with that. But from all the different things that I've heard, there's so many accounts of their behaviors that seem very animalistic, very, I don't know if you want to use the word natural or not, because I don't know if these things are natural, but I mean, I kind of lean towards the fact that they are probably either a giant ape or some sort of hominid that has yet to be recognized. But as far as the so-called woo stuff goes, now this is just some goofy theory that I came up with, but it could be, whether you want to call it demons or interdimensions or aliens, I don't know. It could be something trying to mimic these creatures because they're large, intimidating, strong creatures, from what I understand. So if it's something that is interdimensional or whatever, could be trying to mimic that because it's a good way to scare the hell out of somebody.
Yeah, I don't think that's a crazy idea at all. I've actually thought about that too myself. Is it something else mimicking these things? Is it something else pretending to be these things?
Yeah.
But it's hard to pass off some of the weird stuff. I don't have an answer for what Sasquatch is, let alone half the weird stuff that goes on. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
But
nobody does. Anybody call themselves an expert won't
delusional.
smoke. Yeah,
Yeah.
because there's no such thing as an expert, especially in something like this.
Yeah. No, it is. It's I love the account though, especially that's the account I'd want in a big truck that if it steps in front of it, it's probably done. You know what I mean? You're
Oh
you're
yeah.
you're basically in a tank going down the road, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah. I mean, I've thought about it plenty of times, and
I would love to have another encounter like that, though. I mean, I like being out in the woods. I'm a hunter, although I haven't had much time for the past few years. But I still love to be in the woods, and I don't want to meet one on foot. But if I can see one again through being in this truck, especially moving, I want to see it moving, just to get an idea of like the body movements and whatever else. I don't really know, but I'm not afraid to see him again. As long as I'm in the truck.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate you coming on and sharing it. Was that probably the most bizarre thing you've seen out driving truck?
Well, I have seen something else that I have no idea what the hell it was, and I can't find it on the internet anywhere.
What was it? I'm curious. What happened?
This happened back in the summer of 2008. I don't remember the exact month. It was either June or July. And I started driving truck in 2007, and I was OTR from 2007 through 2008. And OTR is over the road, in case anybody doesn't know. And I was heading east on I-10, and I had crossed into New Mexico from Arizona. I don't remember exactly how long, somewhere about half hour to an hour previous. But it was probably like 3 o'clock in the morning, because I was driving teams with my father actually at the time. And I was used to being up at night because I had worked third shift for years beforehand. So I would drive at night. And I don't remember being a whole lot of traffic around me at that hour. But I see coming from, which would be my left-hand side, it's coming from the south, heading towards the north. There's this thing is about 3 feet long, flying through the air. And not like a craft or anything. It looked very organic, like it was a living animal. But its wings, as they were flapping on the side, I don't know if you've ever seen, you could probably look it up on YouTube, how a squid, the way they swim, the fins that are on the side of their long heads, it's kind of like a wave. That's exactly how the wings were going on its side. And I had a side view of it, so I couldn't see the other side on how the other wings, but I would imagine it'd be about the same. But if just probably 70 or so feet in front of the truck, probably about 20 feet off the ground, my headlights illuminated because it was white. And it just stayed on a level flight path, like it wasn't diving down or climbing or anything, but went just straight across the road and it just disappeared into the dark off to the north. And I cannot figure out what that was. I tried thinking maybe it was like a garbage bag or something like that, but the way it was moving, if it was a garbage bag or something, the whole thing would have been whipping in the wind. But this thing, just the sides of these skinny wings that were almost the whole length of its body, were just moving in this like a wavelength looking movement. It was really weird. I still to this day figure out what it is. I've never heard of it before.
Yeah, that is strange. When you first started talking, I was thinking the rods. People talk about seeing the rods.
Yeah.
They're kind of like an orb, but just stretched out more like a rod.
Yeah.
But this thing had wings, huh?
Yeah. From what I could tell, again, it was a straight side view of it. So I have no idea how to tell how long they would have been. But it was just the movement of those wings was just extremely weird. It looked like it should have been in the water the way it was moving instead of out in the air. Because you know how birds usually have to flap their wings a good distance for however long their wing is, to get the momentum to keep themselves up off the ground and moving. This thing was just like a wavelength. I don't even know how to explain it. It's weird.
Was it lit up? Was it illuminating or was it?
No, it was not illuminated at all. It's the only time it was illuminated was when my headlights hit it as it came in front of the truck.
Yeah, that is bizarre. And so it was. Forgive me, I'm a little slow. So it was stretched out more like an eel, but it had these weird wings. Is that kind of what it looked like?
Yeah, you could probably say it that way too. Yeah, but again, I have no idea how long off the body those wings extended because I didn't have that good of a view of it, except for just a straight-on side shot view.
Yeah, that's strange, man. That's really bizarre. I'm really not sure what it could have been.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Especially the way you described the wings. Were they like vibrating, kind of like you were saying underwater?
Yeah, I mean, like if the best thing I can think of is, like I said, if you like go on YouTube and look up a video of a squid swimming, and just watch these really thin. I think they're almost transparent type fins or wings that are on the side of its long head. The way they move is exactly what it looked like from the angle I had on it.
Yeah, that's bizarre, man. That's really bizarre. Has anything else? Have you seen anything else while out there driving, like over the road?
Every once in a while, I've seen like weird lights in the sky you can't really explain, but it's not enough of something that you can really seriously question. You know what I mean? I don't know if that makes any sense, but no, I did see a as defined UFO once, but that was when I was 13, which was pretty weird.
And was that in your yard, or where'd you see it?
Yeah, I was actually outside in the yard of my youngest brother, who was only 3 at the time, because I'm 10 years older than him. But and it wasn't like an actual like a solid craft that I can see. What it was just a single ball of light in the air, but it was just bouncing around like crazy, almost kind of like, if you ever see like a fruit fly or a gnat, the way they fly all just spastically like they're on LSD or something.
Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly what it was doing, but it was going extremely fast, and I have no real way of guessing how high in the air it was. If I had to guess, it was over 10,000 feet. It was a good ways up, but it was just like a fair distance every time it moved in one direction, but it would just ricochet back and forth all over the place, and then it just shot off. It did it for probably about 4 seconds, I'm guessing, and then just shot off in whatever direction that was, so fast that it almost looked like the light had stretched and just disappeared.
Yeah, that's strange. It's very strange. A lot of people describe UFOs as balls of light. A lot of eyewitnesses I talk to, not the balls of light I talk about in the forest, but in the sky, being larger balls of light. And a lot of people have a hard time trying to describe a shape to it. It's more or less a light. Very, very strange. And I love truck drivers. You know, they always have some of the best encounters, some of the best stories when they're out there driving. And I really appreciate you taking the time to come on. I know you're working right now, and I appreciate you taking a moment to come on and share what happened to you.
No, I mean, it's no problem. I appreciate you, taking the time to at least hear my story.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again, Matt.
Hey, no problem.
And that's it for tonight, everyone. Remember, if you've had an encounter, shoot me an email. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com. Until next time, everyone.
My wheels unturned to go alone. Baby, you should know that I'm gone. With the lights on, this is my home. Place where I own memories of you, dear. Hunting your eyes, close at the skies. I'm mesmerized. The memories of you, dear. I saw moon as a human and lighter. So I put my speed a little wiser. Turned to instant thinner, quieter. With the lights on.